Hi, I'm Benjamin Mac Jackson, founder of the World War II Veterans History Project. I started this project in the summer of 2015 with the goal of providing knowledge and inspiration to my generation so they can better appreciate and understand what these heroes went through. My mission is to preserve the memories of the greatest generation. In this story, World War II veteran Vivian Avalon, a private in the Army Air Corps, gives us a glimpse into the life of a Women's Air Corps soldier, also known as a WWII. Miss Abalon describes how she became an airplane mechanic who later transitioned to a position at the newly built Pentagon building. Eventually, she became a chaplain's assistant, which prevented her from being sent to Japan in late 1945. The amazing scrapbook she assembled 70 years ago will keep you mesmerized as she shares her story.
Vivian Abalon. My branch of service was in the Army Air Force, World War II. I was PFC. Back then, we didn't get rank. I was working as a staff sergeant, but the ranks were for the fellas that were going overseas and all. And we were just glad to help out and do the work. I enlisted with my girlfriend, and from that day on, I never saw her. She was shipped to Germany. In fact, she started off at the South Post, and they put me on the North Post. Then she was shipped to Germany, and we have never, ever seen each other since. Now she, I believe, is in North Dakota. Yeah, it was too bad. The first day going to the service was a real trip. I went from Connecticut to Georgia in a train without running water or any accommodations. And my first day was real hectic, very hectic. First of all, they sent me to clerk typist school. Then I went to Bowling Field and worked on airplanes. And from there, they sent me to the Pentagon on detached service, and I worked on records. And that was exciting because I was at Bowling Field, and we had to cross the Potomac River in a shuttle every day back and forth. And the Pentagon was some building that you could really get lost in. It was some experience. I met my first husband, but I didn't marry him until 7 years later. We corresponded, and I didn't want to get married while I was in the service. I wanted to get back to my family. We met in one of the offices where I was stationed, and he was in there a lot. He took me up in a small plane and did loop-the-loops, tailspins, 90-degree precision landing. That was an experience. I didn't think I would come down from that. Yeah. I had quite a few plane rides. I flew in a C-47, in a B-25, and a nose of the A-26 across country when I could get a ride. That was exciting without a parachute or anything. B-25 sitting on the bottom and not even, you know, it was not built for passengers. When I was in North Carolina, one of the girls played a trick on me, and she had sand in my bed. And another time, we had our barracks was raided. Smart wax from another barracks. They were just horsing around. Being with Lily Maud at North Carolina and later finding out she was Joseph Bonzell's mom, and going to her home in the country, and her father raised melons and peanuts, and it was such a rural area. It was really different. I had all nice officers, but the very first one made me feel I had really made a mistake. She was court-martialed after she was through with my group because she was so hard on us. I had to have a root canal done, and back then they didn't do it like now. They had to cut the gum and whatnot, and I was about 4 hours at the dentist, and when I come back, she had me marching in the field for 4 hours. And she shaved the girl's hair up the back, and she finally got court-martialed because that wasn't the way to be treating us and having us feel the service was that bad. I was supposed to go to Japan. I was slated to go to Japan. But my brother, he was a year older than me, we were both home on furlough at the same time. And I said to my mom, when I go back, I'm slated to go to Japan. And he looked at me and he said, "You're not going to Japan." And he was so adamant about it because back then, you know, we were fighting the Japanese, and he just didn't think it was the right place for me. So when I went back, I said to my friends, you know, my brother doesn't want me to go to Japan, and he's instilled it in my mom that I shouldn't go. They said, well, all you could do, my nickname was Abby, go see the chaplain. So I went and saw the chaplain, and he made me chaplain's assistant. Thanks to my brother, I was in the churches from morning until night, fixing the Vespers for one church, writing the reports for 3 churches, all at Mitchell Field, New York. And I was really thanking him for the way things turned out. Well, you get so used to being with a group and your camaraderie and the friends you made, and we're all splitting up, going different places. And the problem is women get married, change their name, and you lose contact. That's how I had lost contact with Lily Maud. We just all had to go our way. I became a lot more politically minded and listened to the news on everything that was going on around the world, and really became interested and involved in everything that I hadn't been before. It made my outlook a lot broader on worldly affairs. It really matures you a lot. I was 20 when I went in. You had to be 20 with your parents' consent.
World War II WWII veteran Vivian Avalon kept a scrapbook from her time during the war, and it is one of the newest additions to my collection, which is on display in the Traveling Museum of World War II. It takes you back in time when you see the personal artifacts of a female service member. Her scrapbook is filled with remarkable items such as ID cards, personal letters, dinner menus, and postcards, just to name a few, all of immense historical importance. These postcards, which maintained a humorous theme, were available for purchase by the WWIIs at various military installations. In addition, her scrapbook contains once restricted and secret documents about WWII movements and organization structures. It is truly an honor to preserve Miss Avalon's memories in the Traveling Museum of World War II and carry it on for future generations. Miss Avalon is 94 years old and resides in the Villages, Florida. In this story, World War II veteran Florence Johnson, a specialist Q First Class, shares her stories from her time in the U.S. Navy as one of the women accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service, better known as WWIVs. WWIVs were the World War II women's branch of the United States Naval Reserve. Miss Johnson talks about what life was like for a WWIV stationed in Washington, D.C., as she recalls the secret work that she and her colleagues shared while working in the cryptology department. Here's her story.
Florence Pignoni, and I was in the U.S. Navy WWIVs, and I got to be Specialist Q First Class when I was discharged, and Q was for communications. When the war started, all the young girls would go to the YMCA and fold bandages, which were sent to the military overseas. We also had rationing. There were a lot of foods that came from overseas that we couldn't get, and all the families were given ration books for various things. Living on the East Coast in New England, the German U-boats were seen off the coast of Maine, so all along the coast we had blackouts every night. All the houses either put up black draperies or had black blinds that they put on. And then we had air raid wardens traveling the streets to make sure that there were no lights showing. In one case, one air raid warden saw lights on in a house and they would just flash. So he thought they must be signaling someone. So he went to check. Well, as it turned out, every time, they didn't have curtains on their windows because they weren't having lights on it. And it turned out that it was every time someone in the house opened the refrigerator door to get something, the light was flashing. Since my sister Jean was in the Navy, I decided that when I was of age, I'd like to go in the Navy too. So when I turned 20, with my parents' consent, I enlisted. I was sent to Hunter College in New York City for my boot camp. And then I was assigned to Washington, D.C. in the Office of the Chief of Naval Operations. At that time, nobody said anything about what they were doing, what kind of work they did, and everything was very secret.
Mrs. Johnson was stationed at WWIV's Quarters D in Washington, D.C. for most of the war. This complex was responsible for cryptology work and conducted secretive operations. The WWIVs stationed here were tasked with decoding German messages and passing the information on to military leaders. These photographs show how life was like for WWIVs stationed here. In their spare time, the women participated in numerous activities such as card games, dancing lessons, and sports.
These are our patches from our seersucker uniforms, and these are all the Specialist Q, that's first class. That was when I was seaman. These dark ones are the seaman too, and then these are from the Specialist, first, second, and wait a minute, yeah, first, second, and third. Of course, I was discharged as a third. These are the ruptured ducks, which you got when you got out of the Navy. And these are little insignias that were on our jackets of the anchors. This is the seersucker. These were the summer uniforms. Of course, it's been so long that I don't remember too much about them, you know, how they were issued or anything. But they were certainly made of good material, because the material is still lasting after 70 years. This is the regular uniform jacket with the insignia on your sleeve when I was first class. And this is when you get discharged. It's called the ruptured duck. And I was recently asked if I fit in my uniforms, which of course I don't. And one of the ladies told me, well, at least you fit in your hat. These were very comfortable hats. I like these better than the others. This was the first one that we had, and that was to our winter uniform. And then they had the seersucker ones for the summer uniforms. And so these are what probably fit me now. This is the other style that we had. And it's not as comfortable as the Garrisons. And you can tell how small the head is that it wouldn't fit me. When the war ended, we were all in for the duration plus 6 months. So I went in 1944, and I was honorably discharged in 1946 as a Specialist Q first class. It was a very nice experience because wherever you went, you were with other waves. You worked in offices. There were some sailors there, but there were a lot of waves, and most of the time you were with waves, so you didn't notice anything different. I kept in touch with many of the girls, and unfortunately most of them have gone now. And as I always tell everyone, there's nobody older than I that I know anymore. They're all gone. Having been brought up in a family of 5 girls and 2 boys, it's quite different. So I learned to live with other people, and I met people from all over the United States, which was very nice. And you learn a lot by being with different people. So I felt that I learned a lot too. Because I really led a sheltered life at home. And having been brought up by foreign parents, that makes a difference too. But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Miss Johnson is 93 years old and resides in the Villages, Florida. To learn more about the World War II Veterans History Project, please visit our website at WWII VeteransHistoryProject.com. We look forward to seeing you again for more exciting stories from the greatest generation.